Yesterday I watched it on YouTube. Now I know it's a fact.
G'day everyone, it's me, the Anti-Theocrat, back with another one. Let's kick off here. Look, Puffing Billy just shunted in the cars and the engine's buggering off. The Puffing Billy Railway is a narrow gauge railway running in Victoria. It used to be an old suburban line out through the hills. They now run several engines and quite a profitable little setup down there. But yes, anyway, getting on with things. If you're ever in Victoria, Puffing Billy Railway is worth a run. Now, where were we? We're going to start out with this lovely stuff here. This is the Victorian government and delivering for all Victorians. I think we can take that as the first lie on the page. How many more lies there will be, we will see, but I'm pretty sure that delivering for all Victorians is not the case in this article, or this piece of whatever in the hell it is. Let's find out. Delivering Victoria's first dedicated family violence court. It's the Department of the Attorney General. Now, if the Attorney General is not delivering for all Victorians, Victorians are fucked. Victoria's first specialist family violence court is now open in Shepparton, delivering a key project in response to recommendations of the Royal Commission and presenting the Andrew Labor government's ongoing investment in responding to family violence. I'm going to say that the Royal Commission may not have actually suggested this proposal. That this proposal is some weird feminist adaptation of what was recommended. Attorney General Jill Hennessy visited Shepparton today to officially open the purpose-built building, which includes separate court entrances for a safe waiting space with amenities for applicants and their children, helping to support people living with family violence. A large team of specially trained magistrates, operational staff, family violence practitioners, partner agencies and other court-based services will work together to deliver a coordinated response. Now what that means, that there is they're feminist courts, because the magistrate training is feminist training. The operational staff, family violence practitioners and partner agencies are all feminist-run agencies and people. The court-based services are much the same. There are only women-only services. There are no men's services. But we'll get to that because they make this very clear. The court's operating model will be supported by enhanced family violence services for families and the introduction of a court-mandated counselling program to help improve the reach and impact of men's behaviour change programs. So this court is basically about creating a funnel to shove men into behaviour changing programs. Behaviour changing programs are feminist programs based on the principle that masculinity is toxic and it must be changed. In order to make that change, whether you're a perpetrator or a victim, you must first admit that you're to blame. That's the nature of men's behaviour changing programs. There are actually examples of the contracts that men have had to sign going into these things, pushed in by courts, where they were actually the victim, and the form on going in made them declare that they were the perpetrator. They were the cause of the violence in the home. So yes, that's the Labor government has invested $130 million towards establishment of the Specialist Family Violence Court Division after recommendation by the Commission into Family Violence, the Royal Commission into Family Violence. Again, I doubt the Royal Commission into Family Violence said this. was a good option. I don't, and if it did, it's no wonder we're pushing for another one. Because this is pure feminist claptrap. And anyone who came up with that as a solution for family violence is a fucking retard. Anyway, moving on, because there are other lovely things to cover here. We'll shut that one down because we're done with it. I'm going to come back to it. Now, I don't know who Mick are or Mike are, and I don't really give a shit. But I thought Natasha Lusinski had a really important point to make here. Living apart together is becoming more common, but is actually good for relationships. Really? Okay, Gwyneth Paltrow. Well, there's your first problem. She's a fucking nutcase. Her and her husband live apart together. Well, that must be a successful relationship. I mean, she's a fucking Fruit Loop, and he doesn't want to live with her, right? Splitting their time between a shared home and separate houses. It's good to have extra houses, eh? Everyone needs spare houses. Many people expressed skepticism. Well, you know, I do know people whose relationships worked very successfully because they didn't live together. But at the same time, they were quite married, and when they weren't working far apart, they were together. But I think what we're talking about here is people who essentially choose not to live together. And what sort of relationship is that? Well, I knew guys in my younger years who went to the club and picked up the same girl every weekend. Because the same girl liked him, and she made herself available to him every weekend. So he'd take her home every weekend. And 10 years later, he'd marry someone else. Because he wasn't committed to her. It wasn't a relationship. I do not believe in this shit at all. Look, I have a different form of relationship to most people. I have something outside the norm. And I have put a lot of thought into relationships. But a relationship is not a relationship if you can't be with that person. You might as well fuck with strangers every weekend because you don't have a relationship with the person you're claiming to have a relationship with. For me, it's the state of most polyamorous relationships, which is the nature of my own. It's more like swinging, but with, you know, some repeat customers, like the guys I used to go clubbing with. Anyway, I think if this is the future of relationships, humanity's fucked. It's that simple. We're going to have more guys paying for children they're not seeing. That's the only outcome here, because it's the outcome of marriages quite often now. Well, if you're not even living together to begin with, we're just fucked. Humanity's fucked. So glad I will be dead before it's totally fucked. Okay, let's look at some really, really intelligent people. Look at these people. Aren't they just... Don't they make you happy? Extinction Rebellion protests strain police resources, but they promise they will be back in April. There you go, they're going to be back in their little dress-ups and costume play, the little LARPers out pretending to protest and do something useful for the world. The organisers of a week of disruptive Extinction Rebellion protests in Melbourne claim that they have started a mainstream movement. Yeah, not really. It was kicked off with money by money people who are socialists, openly socialists. They want to bring down our current governments and bring in things like people's committees. Now that's just fucking socialism, however you look at it. But the government remains unmoved, and police say they cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, see, this is the other reason they're not mainstream. because they're just pissing people off. You don't become mainstream by pissing people off. So, anyway, we'll read on before I get back to the whole climate change issue and where that goes, and this coming back in April thing. Victorian police said 111 people were arrested in the state. 45 people were charged with obstructing an emergency services worker, a charge with a maximum 5 years in prison. Let's hope they get it. 56 others, however, were only issued fines of $360 for obstructing a road. Now, going back up, let's point out what this apparently cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what are we going to get back? $360 each from 60 people. I think we could stretch them a $10,000 fine each myself. But, you know, apparently that's all they're going to get. Slap on the wrist. So we've got more down here about the man hours by the police and all that kind of crap. And I'm not really interested. Here's your Fruit Loops. But what's interesting is that these people will be back in April. Now, I've heard that the world is going to end in anything from 3 months to 7 years. But apparently nothing is critical between now and April. I'd like to see these people out in the street, larping their hearts away, pretending to be doing something useful and getting themselves fucking arrested time and time and time again before April. I think that way they'll have an impact on the prison population, and I should enjoy that. Anyway, this is apparently what a mainstream movement looks like these days. Did I say humanity was fucked? Moving on. Oh, by the way, those 3 month to 7 year predictions, they were the same things I was hearing 15 years ago. Just for the record, we sort of bypassed all of that a long time ago, but the numbers have stayed about the same. But the fucking Fruit Loops have gotten worse. Okay. I like SpongeBob. I find anything to do with SpongeBob funny, so I'm going to find this hilarious. We have daft things like SpongeBob songs on iPods, you know, to travel or walk with, you know. There's SpongeBob's just one of those things. Our oldest son grew up with SpongeBob. Our youngest son is growing up with SpongeBob. And the nice thing about SpongeBob is it's one of those comics that it's one of those cartoon series that applies. The adults understand a element of the humour, and the kids understand the doofiness of it. So you can all sit and watch it. It's much like Rocko's Modern Life or a lot of other things like that, where the humour, a lot of it went right over the heads of the kids. But the kids loved it, so it was good watching. But apparently, SpongeBob is a violent, racist colonizer. Yes. I'm sorry, but even saying that makes me want to laugh. SpongeBob SquarePants, which celebrated its 20th anniversary on Friday, has millions of fans around the world. But one University of Washington professor, send your kids there, because that's fucking the place to go, isn't it? University of Washington's got the best professors, is clearly not among them. For a recently published academic journal, the professor, Holly M. Barker, who'd have thought it was a fucking woman, wrote an article, Unsettling SpongeBob and the Legacy of Violence on Bikini Bottom. Now, before we go on, that's the link to the article, and I did bring up the actual paper, but there's no fucking way I'm paying $18 for this shit, or $29 for this kind of shitty publication. So we'll have to stick with the story. There is enough there to show me that what Fox was reporting was correct and legitimate, so I'm going to close that because I'm not going near that bloody journal. Where were we? Unsettling SpongeBob and the Legacy of Violence on Bikini Bottom. Now, give or take, cartoon violence on Bikini Bottom, that's fair enough. It exists. But this gets really fucking weird, in which she offers a different take on the affable sea sponge. Sorry, that got my tongue twisted. SpongeBob SquarePants and his friends play a role in normalising the settler colonials' taking of indigenous lands while erasing the ancestral Bikinian people from their non-fictional homeland. Non-fictional homeland? The article reads. Non-fictional homeland of Bikini Bottom. There's a reason why she thinks this is non-fictional. We'll move on. Barker calls SpongeBob's colonisation of Bikini Bottom violent and racist, and also claims that the cartoon is guilty of whitewashing of violent American military activities against natives of the Pacific. Now, if you've seen the SpongeBob movie, you could very easily get the idea that the entire world of SpongeBob takes place in a fish tank. And I know there's a lot of ocean scenes throughout the entire series and even in the movie, but there is just so much suggestion that it is possibly just all a bloody fish tank. It's certainly a fictional world anyway, and a very odd one. But Pineapples Under the Sea, love SpongeBob. Barker's belief comes from the idea that the show is set in a version of the real-life Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. Of course, that's what they were thinking. Bikini Atoll. That's why they went for Bikini Bottom. Not because Bikini Bottom is funny. You know, they could have called it Bikini Top as well. Woohoo! Anyway, during the Cold War, natives of the area were relocated and the American military used the zone for nuclear testing. And this is why she sees SpongeBob as being an American colonizer, is because she thinks that Bikini Bottom and Bikini Atoll are the same place. She thinks that SpongeBob moved in and tested nuclear bombs. Yeah, pretty much. The area still remains uninhabited to this day. That history has given rise to the fans' theory that Bikini Bottom is inhabited by creatures who owe their mutation to that testing. It doesn't really matter what people think these mutations are or whatever. I mean, SpongeBob is a square-shaped sponge. He's essentially a sea sponge caricature. He's not a sea sponge. He's a kitchen sponge, but he's a sea sponge. He's not. It's just a really daft cartoon image of a sea sponge. But apparently, this is, nuclear mutation. Barker stated that as an American character, because that's important. I mean, an American made it. Americans, were behind it all. So, the fact it's an American character makes all the difference. I mean, I'm an Australian. I'm so offended that it's an American character made in America. No, I'm not. Shit, it's just a bloody thing. Allowed to inhabit an area that natives had no choice but to leave. Really? Bikini Bottom? Is this the assumption? Bikini Bottom is Bikini Atoll. And because this is factually true, SpongeBob shifted the fucking natives on to do his nuclear testing. Seriously, I can't read any more of this. I'm going to move away from doing this video. We're going to call it quits at this point. I just want you to all have a laugh with me at the fact that somebody thinks that SpongeBob SquarePants in Bikini Atoll is in the actual Bikini Atoll, and he's a product of nuclear testing by the Americans. Somebody doesn't know how to differentiate between fiction and reality. And I'll remind you, this is a University of Washington professor. That's the place to send your kids, remember. Okay. We'll call it a day at that. I've been the anti-theocrat. May your gods remain fictional, and I'll see you in the next one.
Video. They teach me every bloody thing how to find every